As part of my formation for ordination and service as a priest, I was assigned to a parish in central Los Angeles. Near the end of my time there, the rector organized a trip to the Holy Land, a month-long class at St. George's in Jerusalem, following in the footsteps of Jesus. It took us 2 tries, there was a war in between, but finally we did get to go. When we stepped off the plane in Tel Aviv, we were stopped by a line of gun-bearing soldiers who looked like maybe they were 15 years old. We had to cross over that line to enter the country, a rather formidable boundary. And once past that, we were taken to a hall where we were separated and checked out. I was put in a different line from the rest of my group. I was white, they were black. Another boundary. Boundaries, borders, we hear a lot about them today. In the context of our country and around the world, a political issue for sure. But I suspect if we look at ourselves, there are boundaries and borders in our own lives. We seem more apt to stay among those we know, to keep the circles of relationships tight, to include or exclude, using pretty tight criteria. In today's gospel lesson, many boundaries are crossed. Jesus has been teaching and walking across the country, followed by large crowds. He heals the sick, feeds the hungry. Some of the religious authorities confront and challenge him. Then he goes to the northwest border of Israel, to the cities of Tyre and Sidon, Gentile country, to a Jew, enemy territory. Canaanites were old and bitter enemies of Israel. The boundaries are up. Religious boundaries, national boundaries, gender boundaries. Imagine the courage it must have taken for the Canaanite woman to approach and speak to Jesus. Just about everything was against her. By first-century Mediterranean standards, the woman's request to heal her daughter was outrageous. It was made by a woman alone with no male relative to speak for her. Women did not speak to unknown men. She was a Gentile, a Canaanite, a representative of the original inhabitants of the land of Israel, and the one most hated by the Israelites. Even her description, the Canaanite woman, is a slight. In that time, the people would have more likely been called Syro-Phoenicians. Calling her a Canaanite was similar to our calling a Dane or a Norwegian a Viking. The woman was seeking help for her daughter. Daughters were the more expendable gender in the ancient world. The fewer, the better. Daughters were expensive to dower, and therefore could be considered a liability rather than an asset to the family. If a daughter were to die young, well, that might be considered a great loss. That might be considered no great loss. If she were possessed by a demon, as in this case, she might be turned into an asset, using her powers of divination. To go out of one's ways to obtain a daughter's release from a demon was certainly far from the norm. We can see the distance between Jesus and the woman. She does not approach him. Rather, she shouts at him. Shouts across the distance. No quiet plea, not quite daring to cross all the boundaries that separate them. She must have heard of him before he came to the city, for she addresses him as Son of David. Mercy, Master, Son of David, my daughter is cruelly afflicted by an evil spirit. Silence. Jesus ignores her. But the woman does not give up. Even his disciples asked him to send her away, to stop her shouting. Jesus again rebuffs her. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Kneeling at his feet, she again begs, "Lord, help me. It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." A further insult, one that would have come from the context of the time. Gentiles were outsiders, not God's chosen, not part of the house of Israel. The Israelites were the chosen. Gentiles, outsiders, were the dogs, unclean, not welcome. But again, the woman persists. She does not give up. "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." I wish we could see inside of Jesus' head, Jesus' heart at this point. The faith of the woman has challenged the boundaries, the borders. Her persistence in asking for the deliverance of her daughter possessed by a demon may have aroused Jesus' sympathy and may have shown the importance of deliverance from hatred, from ancestral enmity, deliverance which allows listening, hearing the reality of the woman in need so that she is no longer the enemy. Jesus' mission has expanded. The mercy of God is not limited. The blessings of God are for all. Great is your faith. And the daughter was healed. In this section of the Gospel of Matthew, we've been looking at some amazing narratives, miracles performed by Jesus. These accounts give us a picture of the life of Jesus, of his ministry and healing. We also see these accounts as signs of ways of pointing to us to a deeper understanding and knowledge of God. 2 weeks ago, we read the feeding of the 5,000, God's provision of bread and fish in the wilderness, the 12 baskets of food left over, reminding us of the 12 tribes of Israel and the abundance of God's grace. Then last week, Jesus walking on the sea, the care of God's people in the crossing of the Red Sea as the Israelites fled from Pharaoh's captivity, the crossing of the Jordan as the 12 tribes entered the promised land, the story of Jonah, that God's grace will abound, first to the Jews, then to the Gentiles. And today, the crossing of boundaries, the realization that God's mercy, God's love is open to all. After healing the woman's daughter, Jesus reaches out and heals people with all kinds of needs, and then feeds the 4,000 Gentiles. Everyone ate, and there were 7 baskets of food left over, bringing to mind the 7 Gentile nations that Joshua encountered in the Promised Land, no longer eliminated, but included, healed, fed. Boundaries, borders, being erased and overcome. An understanding not of insider versus outsider, but one in which all are welcome. And what about us? Where are the boundaries that we put up here in the church and more broadly in our lives? I spent most of the first year of my ordination in a wheelchair. I learned a lot about physical boundaries that people with limited mobility face. Does God love only those who can walk? I think not. Is God's love limited to those who have a certain income, or speak a certain language, or dress in a certain way? How in our parish, in our workplaces, in our schools, can we be welcoming to all people, those like us and those who may be different? Do the words we speak, the actions we take, offer welcome, or are they off-putting? Where is the Spirit calling us today to break down the barriers which divide, which separate us from each other? It is not easy. We're most comfortable with those with whom we are familiar. Difference can be frightening. It can be messy. It may necessitate doing things in a new way, and the old way is so comfortable, it feels so right. Each time a person is baptized, we answer the questions, will you seek and serve Christ in all persons? Will you strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being? And we answer, I will, with God's help. With God's help, may we know in our heads, in our hearts, the expanse of God's love for us and for all. May we learn to live that love day by day. Amen.
Amen.